Hi everyone, it's Mike here and welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to day 7 of my 7 days of Halloween. So today's project is going to be quite complicated, quite involved and possibly quite lengthy. So let me turn over to my overhead camera and show you what I'm hoping to attempt. Okay, so I'm hoping all that is in frame. So I'm making a mixed media canvas today. So what I'm showing you here is I've already placed out where I want everything to go on the canvas. Now, I haven't done one of these projects in many moons. In quite a long time. So I'm feeling a little bit nervous about doing it today. Purely because I am out of practice and it's been such a long time since I did one. So I'm hoping that it's going to go right. But now normally if I was going to do one of these canvases for myself, I would glue and stick everything down using a heavy gel medium. Something like this from Indigo Blue, the super thick Slap It On. But this takes a while to dry. So that would mean sticking everything down and then leaving it for an hour or so, or even longer, and then coming back and doing the painting. And I haven't really got the luxury of the time of doing that today because I have other commitments today, particularly for Mum and Dad. So to speed things up, I'm going to attempt to use a hot glue gun. Now hot glue guns are good in that they stick and hold things in place really quickly. But the downside to using a hot glue gun over a gel medium is that hot glue guns are hot and they're finicky and you get strings on them, whereas you don't get that with the gel medium. But also with the hot glue gun, if you're using your heat gun to dry your paint layers, you also run the risk of reactivating and melting the glue. Because that's all it is. It's just this kind of thing that's melted and that holds it in place. It's great if you're not going to use heat again, but as soon as you do start using heat, then things start to melt. But if you're aware of that before you start and you take that into consideration, then we should be okay. So one of the hardest things about doing a mixed media canvas like this is the fact that once you've laid everything down and you kind of know where everything wants to go, you've got to take it all off again. So you then run the risk of forgetting where you place things. So you may end up, unless you take loads and loads of photographs to reference while you're placing all your items down, you run the risk then of forgetting where you place things and it not turning out quite the way you imagined it was going to turn out. So that's one of the other problems. So it's fraught, if you like, with, not with danger, but with getting it wrong. And obviously things will move, you'll catch things. So it's one of those evolving processes where you just have to go with the flow and see what happens. I've got a cup of coffee. It's my second one today, so I'm not overly caffeined up. But I also have a few other little elements that I might add in as background texture. Just some wooden elements, just to give things different kind of depths. So the first step really is to take some pictures of what I've got so far. So I'm just going to grab my phone, go to photos, and then just take a few pictures of where things are. Make sure you get all the items and then you can just flip back through and then see where you had things. Just for reference later on. The other thing is, when you're working on a canvas, this is a box canvas and it has a cavity underneath, so it's just the canvas frame. It's a wooden frame with the canvas over it, so there is a hole underneath. So I've got something underneath that that's going to just hold the canvas up rather than and stop it from flexing. So here goes nothing. Blank canvas. Okay, so as I was saying, I've got something underneath the canvas just to stop it from falling in, if you like. So I've got a stencil. This is my fleur-de-lis stencil. So I'm going to add a little bit of texture just onto the background first of all, just using some structure paste. Grab a dollop and I'm going to just move it so it's just towards the end of the canvas, and I don't particularly want an even kind of coating, so that will do just nicely. I don't mind it broken up around those edges. A little bit more. Now this won't take a huge amount of time to dry. And if it's kind of rough, so much the better. I'm just going to wipe off any excess from the edges onto my finger, and I did have a wet wipe. There we go. Of course, you must remember, once you've finished doing this, you really need to get your stencil into water as soon as you possibly can, because otherwise, if this stuff dries on your stencil, you will ruin it. And I've just managed to get it all over my fingers again. There we go. And I'm just bringing it down into the edges, because if you remember the way that I had all the elements placed, they were kind of from the centre coming outwards. There we go. That'll do. And then one more kind of over this side. I'll just scrape off any excess that's gone through the edge of the stencil there. Luckily, this structure texture paste, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't take a huge amount of time to dry. There we go. So I need to get this in water really quickly, get that washed off, put the structure paste away, and then we're ready to continue. Okay, so obviously what you've got to remember when you're doing anything with texture paste is the thicker the texture paste, the longer it will need to dry, or the longer it will take for you to use the heat gun. So you can see the texture on there now, and that's pretty much dry because I have heat set it, but I also heat set from the reverse of the canvas as well. So I turned the canvas over, held it up, and then went from the back of the canvas so that the texture paste was also drying from the reverse side as well. Okay, so that's pretty much done for the texture paste there. I'm not touching the sides. I'm not adding any texture to the sides of the canvas, which you could do if you wanted an immersive experience. Right, so the next thing I want to do is to start adding some colour before I start adding any items. It's going to be difficult to add colour down in this central section once I've started gluing items down. So I'm going to start adding some gesso. I'm using black gesso just to start off with in the back of the canvas. I'm just drying off my brush. It doesn't matter if I've got any colour contamination on this to start off with, because I just normally leave my brushes in water. So I'm going to add some gesso just into that centre section, and then I'm going to spritz and add some water, and I'm going to loosen it up a little bit. A bit more. I've got 3 different kind of strength bottles. That wasn't a use nor ornament. 2 different strength bottles. And I'm going to try and just break up the edges, make it a little bit more naturalistic around the edge. Don't want any kind of harsh lines, just want the gesso to just move kind of like on its own. So I'm going to just let it dribble and run. Just let it run round. When it gets to a corner, drop it, let it run. When it gets to the other corner, drop it, let it run. That one's gone over the edge, that's fine. There we go. And then back to the middle again, and then drop it down. And then I'm going to dry that off. But if you wanted to, at this stage, you could also add a little bit of extra colour if you're so inclined. Okay, so if you wanted to add a little pop of colour, then this is where to do it. So I'm just going to grab, don't want too warm colours, so I'm just going to shake up these mica vivids from Catch a Moonbeam from Indigo Blue. These have got mica in them. So I'm just going to add a little bit of I probably should have cleaned that before I put it away. And then Whiskers on Kittens, that's kind of a coppery colour. Give it a shake. Yeah, I definitely should have cleaned these before putting them away. It's okay, they are water soluble, so with any luck, let's see whether that's done the trick. Now I'll just need to work it a bit longer. No, maybe not. Okay, so we can maybe add a bit of metallic in different ways. So I've got some paint. So let's see what we got there. Goldfinger, it's a bit of gold. Alright, lift that off. And grab a brush. Remember, this is still wet. And then all I have to do is just to break it up again and just let it sit and do its own thing just for the time being. Add a bit of gold in there, spritz it, let it mix. Kind of let it do its own thing, just let it mix on its own. If you've got like mica powders, you could just drop some mica powders into it. Black and gold is such a great combination, classic combination. Just ask any fashion designer. Add a bit more up there. Remember, this is just kind of background colour, so I'm not going to pay a huge amount of attention to it just yet. That's it, I'm just breaking up the blocks of the colour. Oh, I think that'll do nicely. Okay, get that dried off. This is going to take a while. Okay, so that's nearly done. So I just want to add a little bit more colour into it. So we've got blacks and golds. But what I'm going to try and do is just also add in just a little touch of silver. So again, this is one of the indigo blue vivids. This is Fresh Morning Mist, which is a kind of bluey grey, which will just add another extra dimension to the background. Okay, so we're nearly dry. So if you have a look, you can see there's that kind of silvery grey, there's the gold up there, but also I introduced one of the other colours, which was peach, which has got some kind of pinkish tinges to it just there. Can you see, just in that corner? Also just a few very, very subtle kind of, and there and about there, just some real kind of subtle pinkish tinges to the metallic. So I'm happy with that first layer. So, and it's mostly, well I'll say mostly dry. There's only a few kind of spots where there's a little bit of moisture left. So I think what I'll do is I'll just carry on heating it just to make sure it's 100%, and then we can get started on actually laying down the construction. Okay, so the background is now pretty dry. So I've got my photo of where things need to go or start to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to position the wings first, approximately there. Bring in that clock, make sure I get it the right way up towards the bottom there. And then position the cogs. Let me just, because I did move one or two around. Yeah, I think I did put a larger cog towards the top with that cherub. So what type is it? It's not that one. I think it was that one. So that needs to come down to about there. And then we had that cherub about there, which kind of acts or acted as a halo. And then I had a smaller cog in there to act as a spacer piece, and that's then where the skull went. That's pretty much, so I'm laying them out kind of where I think they need to go. Perhaps that one was a bit too big. I'm not sure what I had underneath there, to be honest. I can't remember now. But I could always pop a small spacer underneath there. So this is pretty much where we need to put things. I've got my glue gun, it's all hot and ready to go. So I can, there we go, just add spots of glue, because once this is down it ain't going anywhere. So I've got to make sure I get it right first go. That's it, that's holding. And then, as I said before, you will get strings with this kind of thing, but I'm only doing it when you're using the glue gun for speed more than anything else, because otherwise it would just take far too long. For the gel medium to set. And I'm just trying to make sure that I get those pretty accurate. Right, so if I position that top one first, then that one below, that's it, just offset it a little bit. I can go back round later with a brush and remove the strings. That's not a problem. I just need to make sure that I get the positioning there we go, that's cool. And then I'll get this smaller spacer cog in there. And then we're okay to get the main piece of the bird's skull. Now I could use a human skull on this one, but I'm not going to. I do have a large human skull that I could add on to it, but I think the bird skull works better. That's it. Perfect. Just got little elements of those. The cog just showing through the eyes. Okay. Right, so what's next? Let's just have a look at some of this top section. So we've got that big one in the corner there and its counterpart over that side. So once they're in, I can then lay those two cherubs into position there and then into position there. So we'll do that next. See, those strings do come off. You just have to persuade them. I've got some tweezers somewhere. Oh, I'll have a tidy up before I start and look what happens. That's it. There we go. It's just a question of being, just mindful that you are going to get them. Obviously you don't get them if you use the gel medium. It's just one of those things. One of them things. Here we go. And then we can now lay the cherub. So you do have a little bit of wiggle room to add your items before the glue holds, which is fine, which is good. Now then, I want to just add a couple of the screw heads. Now I actually made the mould for this myself. I bought some moulding silicone and I put the screws and I put just half a dozen or so into the silicone, and I've now got a rather large screw head mould, which is perfect for little decoration. Love it. Okay, so we also had, I think, one of the small barn stars towards the bottom. Yes, we did. So let's grab one of those. I'll put that down there. So when that sets, that should be perfect. And then it's just a question then of filling in all the other gaps around it and following the plan. So what I will do is I will go into fast forward. I'll start work on this section here. I'll go into fast forward and I'll start adding in all these bits and pieces. So see you in a little while. Wow, that was epic. So I decided as I was going along not to introduce or not to put these bones in, and I think there's enough of the stars in, so I'm not going to add another one of those in. Now I don't think there's any need for those at all, so we'll save those for another day. Okay, so the next thing that I need to do is I need to prepare these surfaces for accepting paint. Now, the thing with this polyurethane resin is you don't actually really need to add any primer, any gesso, because they do accept paint almost straight away without any priming, but it's always nice just to have a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and I did have a tub of it somewhere, and I'm probably staring it full in the face and not realising it, is a tub of, there you go, a tub of clear gesso. So I'm going to add that all over the canvas. And then once we've got a nice clear coating of the gesso everywhere, I can start to add some more colour. I did say this was going to be a long process today, and you will find as you're going along more of them strings. But like I said, don't worry too much if you're doing a canvas like this. Don't worry about if you miss bits, because if you're using the resin, you will find that it will still pick up the colour really easy. Just remember, if like me and you've used a hot glue gun, using a heat tool could reactivate the glue again. It could remelt the glue, so just be aware of that. If you've used ordinary glue or soft gel or heavy gel medium, then that shouldn't be a problem if you've let it to dry. But if you've used glue gun, just bear that in mind. Back to it. Okay, so for the next step, now that all the adhesive and the glue, the hot glue gun and the the clear gesso is all dry, is I'm going to now start adding in the colour. So I'm going to start adding in some black gesso. I know I could have used black gesso straight away, but I didn't. So now I'm going to start using it. I'm going around those areas. I didn't mention before, but you obviously saw that I was using older resin casts that I'd also done a while ago, that I've got the copper mica already in. So because we've already done the background, I'm not too bothered about unification of what's in the background, what's in the foreground on this. So I can literally, if I do cover the mica and that kind of stuff up that I've already sprayed into the background, that's fine, that's not a problem, because we can always add it or add some more back in again depending on which way we decide to go with the colour with our main accents. Do we go completely rusty, salvagey, patinery, or do we go black and shiny and Halloweeny? That bit I haven't really decided yet. So in the meantime, I'm going to continue to go all the way around the canvas, just adding in my black gesso And then when I've done that, everything should have theoretically kind of disappeared into the background, which is just great, which is what I want. So I'll be back, because I'm just conscious of the length of the video. Don't want it to be overly long or too long. So I'll be back when I've covered everything in the gesso. Okay, so I've gone around most of the items and started to blend those in with that black gesso. Now I'm going to start adding my first layer of coat. So what I've done is I've created an acrylic paint spritzer with Tim Holtz salvaged patina and a couple of drops of Americano Deco Art teal mint. So a combination of those kind of turquoisey, tealy, copper oxidey kind of colours. So this is a brand new spritzer, so you'll have to bear with me. There we go. So I'll just let it soak into everything. Look at the colours that are popping out of there. Ian's just popped in to say hello. Say hello.
Hello. This is lovely.
First coat.
Because it'll dry lighter, won't it, of course?
It will dry lighter, but because this is an acrylic paint, let me just turn that upside down and just clear that nozzle. That's it. That way it won't clog for later. Providing I wipe off the bits. So I've emptied the nozzle. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let that sit. That's going to sit into the... You see how it's pooled into all the little nooks and crannies? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that sit, or maybe just encourage it a little bit, just to give that blue kind of copper oxide-y background. Okay, so that coat of the salvaged patina has now dried, but what I want to do is I want to grunge it up a little bit. So what I've done, you may be able to guess what I've done, is I've also created a darker brown kind of spritzy colour. What I'm going to try and do is just add that into the darker kind of areas in between. But before it starts to run down now. Just add a bit of that around. Okay, so before it kind of starts to dry, I'm going to kind of loosen it up. So it starts to grungy it and dirty it up a little bit. And then if I think it needs a little bit more, so like towards the bottom. And then add some more water, just to loosen it and let it settle, because it will kind of settle and do its own thing, which is exactly what we want it to do. move it backwards and forwards a bit, let it sit in those areas. Perfect. It's all nice and shiny, but we don't want it to be shiny, we want it to be matte. So we're going to leave that to dry, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so the brown has now dried and it's given it some real kind of age and patina. I mean, just look at the kind of marbling effect that's happened on that skull. Almost like turquoise. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so and now I'm actually tempted just to stop and leave it as it is, but I'll add a little bit of gold, a little bit of bling to it. Now I've got two metallic paints here. One which is brass, called Brass Monkey. This is the one that I asked Indigo Blue to make me quite a while ago. But they've also come up with a new one now called Kissing Frogs, which is a kind of aged, tarnished brass, kind of greeny. Can you see that? Which I think is absolutely wonderful, and I think this is going to go really well. The Brass Monkey is going to go really well with this project, but I don't know. I don't want to put gold on the project, just a bit too much I think, but I think the brass is going to be just enough. So I've just given it a quick shake. I'm going to do some dry brushing, so I'm just going to take a little bit of the brass paint and then just add it onto this piece of kitchen roll and literally just dry off my brush end until it's just got enough on it, and then I can just go in and start to add those little highlights. Probably can't see. Let me just start somewhere in the middle. Let me just start over here. It's going to be quite subtle to start, and then as we start building up the metallic layers, you'll start to see it better. See if I can do it over that flower there. So maybe that it is maybe just a little bit too subtle. But that's okay. I don't want in your face. From what I can see from my angle here, I'm very, very happy with the way this is picking up the detail. From my point of view anyway. I'll just keep picking up extra bits. That's probably where you're going to get to see it more readily, I think, once I start adding it to the skull. And also just across the cherubs. I think with these particular type of projects, I think it's more a case of, because the computers never really show exactly how it's picking out the detail, because the colour is never quite there. There we go. You can start to see the colour being picked up now. So I will carry on. I'll go on to fast forward so you can see what's going on and how it's working. Because otherwise you're going to be bored to tears watching me do this. Okay, there you have it. The canvas. Done. And I have to say, I'm absolutely thrilled with the way that has turned out. I'm just hoping and praying that the camera is picking up what I can see here, particularly with those gold, brassy kind of accents. I absolutely love it, and I hope you do too. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me put this together. If you have, please remember to give the video a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye for now.